operationally. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Jennifer. Again, my name is Jeff Serber. I'm Operations Section Chief of Team 1. A little bit of overview for tonight. This perimeter was based on an infrared flight last night. We do one every night, and it gives us an updated perimeter for the fire. I'll get into a little Google Earth presentation that kind of shows what happened between yesterday's perimeter and today's perimeter. And it'll kind of give you an idea of the day change anyway, and you'll probably see, if you were to compare this image with the image tomorrow morning, you'll see what I'm talking about on the Google Earth. So this just gives you a general overview. I'm sure most of you that are watching already know where Glenwood Springs is, and you know where Dots Arrow is, but you can kind of see those 2 points on the map. The I-70 corridor there with a hard red line through the middle of the fire. And then we've got the north side and the south side. We've got it split up into branches and divisions. Those are terminology that we use on fires to describe where we are and where our firefighters are. And it gives you an idea of where geographically our incident action plans, if you ever see those or come to a briefing or see those online, you'll understand pretty much. It gives you an understanding where everybody's located. So we'll move on to the Google Earth image here. And I'll start over here at the I-70 corridor. Try not to make anybody sick by flying too fast. So this is, like I say, last night's image from the infrared aircraft. It shows you that line right here that has been where the fire's draped down all the way into the bottom of No Name Creek. And the day before, just to give you an idea, right there, this triangle right there was green yesterday. And what happened last night is we have a crew in here, a fire crew with pumps and hoses and a way to keep this fire from crossing in the bottom. So last night we decided, rather than be gone in the middle of the night and not have the number of personnel that we normally have out during the day, we decided to start a little bit of ignition right here in this corner while we had the aircraft, while it was still light. And they carried this fire down through here till about midnight, and they were able to burn this out and secure this line all the way down No Name so that it doesn't have an opportunity to climb up the west side of the drainage. So that was a little bit of success that happened last night, and I just kind of wanted to use that as an indicator of the difference between what you see on the map every day and what actually IR does for you. So right here, this was growth from yesterday. Like I say, this is last night. So this was growth from yesterday. Tomorrow morning we'll get another flight, and this area here will be more like the yellow, and then it'll give us what happened the day before. So you can see the growth that's occurring on the fire in this Google image, and what exactly this fire is doing. And without getting into all of the, like I say, divisions, I'm going to try to stay away from the divisions and the branches and talk a little bit more about geography. This is the Grizzly Creek drainage. You can kind of see where Grizzly and No Name split, or Grizzly and No Name don't quite come together, but they get real close. Grizzly ends up coming down here. No Name comes down on the other side. Hopefully you can see where I'm pointing, and it's clear enough. But so you can see that this is in between Grizzly and No Name drainages. There's a couple of cabins up here on top that we have put retardant around that I'm not, there's one right there. We call it the silver cabin. And there's another one in the drainage over here called the brown. It has a brown roof. This one now has a red roof. So it's got a lot of retardant on it, and hopefully it's safe. This afternoon, we did have kind of a little bit of run up into here, and this fire, I would guess there's a spot fire right there, but this is getting established a little bit up here on top. Not a huge concern to us right now because it's between Grizzly and No Name, so you can kind of see when I zoom out, this ridge over here is the one we're working on right now to contain the line. We understand that we're not going to send firefighters down into these drainages trying to cover this type of perimeter. You can imagine what that would be like, how many miles of actual perimeter in there. So today in No Name, we held this. We pretty much held this in the bottom, and it did not cross the no-name drainage yet. There's a large rock escarpment here, and as you know, I believe this is Windy Point right here, unless this may be Windy Point over here, the road going to it. Road and the cabin right over here. And what our plan is here, we have Dozer Line that obviously doesn't show up on Google Earth yet. It's not that current, but we do have Dozer Line coming up the ridge on the little UTV road that we've drawn it out to the point right about here. So we have Dozer Line coming out to that point. We have hand crews that have held it down in here in the bottom, and we're painting retardant from where the Dozer Line ends down into here. We'll keep it out of the water, but we lay retardant in here because this is so rugged that we don't have another means of building fire line. So what that does is if you were to look back at I-70, it gives us this fire that doesn't want to move, this piece right here. This fire that we've contained for the most part down in the bottom, there's still a chance that could, with a wind or some unforeseen event could cross over, but we're starting to feel more comfortable with that. And then what I was talking about before is right down in this location, somewhere like right in here, we draw retardant right up here to the top. And there's a Dozer Line right here. The Dozer Line connects over towards Windy Point, and that's going to be, to give you more of an overview, that would be how we plan to keep the fire from coming back towards Glenwood Springs, all the way up to Windy Point. Beyond Windy Point, this fire will kind of do what fires do. As most of you probably understand, the outdoor people that get out there a lot understand what happens up here on Coffee Pot Road and White Owl and that high country. It's 10,000 feet. It's the fuels get more sparse, and the fire will follow those drainages and consume the available fuel, and then it gets into these openings and it starts to not be able to sustain itself. So we fully expect it to stay in No Name and in Grizzly and continue to throw smoke for quite some time, but that's what we're doing that's our division. November, then we move into Quebec, which is this division over in here. We have a full-blown plan to go all the way out and around up into the high country and come all the way back here to contain both Grizzly over here and No Name over here if we had to go out there and build fire line and try to burn it. But I don't think that's a viable alternative because you can see how sparse it gets out there. It's high country. Some of it's still green and a lot of it's aspen, and it's not carrying fire very well. The reason this fire burned so well is because it was lower elevation in the canyon. It had steep walled canyon, and it just created a huge head of steam on those slopes and was able to run up there to the higher country. One thing I'd like to show, here's Grizzly, like you guys know. Here's Coffee Pot Road right across here, Coffee Pot Springs. This right here is yesterday's growth out there in Coffee Pot, which I'm sure some of the people saw. This created a pretty good plume yesterday. We have another one that kind of went off today, but it wasn't near as big. You can see exactly what's happening here. What's happening is it catches this dark timber on some of the slopes. The lighter timber is the aspen. It picks up when the wind hits it or when the heat hits it, the sun shines on it all day, and then it picks up in the afternoon and makes a run, makes a big cloud of smoke, and then what does it do? It hits that and it can't go anywhere. So we are up there right now with crews staying at Coffee Pot campground, probably 150 people up in that campground tonight, maybe closer to 200. But anyway, we have quite a few folks that are staying up there on top, feel very comfortable staying up there on top because of the conditions are not conducive for that fire to continue to run up towards them or cause them a big problem up there. What our plan is, I'll pull out here back over to Division Whiskey, which is the division that goes from I-70 to the north up to Coffee Pot Road and then across. So this the northeast corner of the fire, as you recall several nights ago, it made a big run out this way. You can see there's been no growth really. You can see this coloration here is the heat. And when you get over here to this side of the fire, you don't see any of that color right there. It's all the yellow and it's basically not growing right here. As of last night, that perimeter stayed the same size as it was before. So what's happened in here is it ran out of fuel. You can see this fuel right in here is a lot more sparse. It needed wind to blow on it to make it burn. It got there, the wind died, it falls out of the trees, and then it can't get its it can't pick up enough heat to get back up into the trees, and it just kind of lays down. Then what we've done is we've sent crews down to the BLM trailhead here, hiked in. They're picking up any heat along this edge, and we've constructed Dozer Line down off the Coffee Pot Road down into here. You'll see that on the map that shows up. It shows up well on the on this map. Not on this map, I'm sorry. This map, no, I'm sorry, it does show that. Right. Right here, this dark kind of X's, that's a Dozer Line that was built. That the fire didn't get to. It got to the Dozer Line in one real small spot, but we put that Dozer Line in yesterday just in case it continued to move. So we have been constructing Dozer Line off that hill from Coffee Pot down towards I-70, but it hasn't really reached the Dozer Line, so we'll go back and fix that later. That was an insurance policy. And so this is all cold, getting real cold. It's hardly putting up any smoke anymore. The smoke today was mostly coming out of these drainages over here to the west of Coffee Pot, south and west of Coffee Pot, and those will continue to pop up here and there. You'll see that smoke, and when it hits the high country, like I say, I wouldn't expect that to continue. Dropping down to the Bear Ranch, this has been a problem area for us for several days. When it crossed down there by Devil's Hole several nights ago, it made a big run, and you can see the progression based upon the yellow and the different colors as it moved across above the Bear Ranch. We put in Dozer Line in this area, stopped the fire from impacting the Bear Ranch. There's Bear Ranch cabins, 100 cabins down in this drainage that we protected with Dozer Line and some burnout operations. Then the fire tried to pretty much outflank us and keep going out to the east over a period of time. It was able to work its way all the way out to Spruce Creek. This is the top of Spruce here. Big lava flow right there. You can see how effective the lava was at stopping it. We're on this road right here right now with a feller buncher taking out trees and creating a line right through this pinch point that where it has opportunity to pick up some steam and try to sneak over into the next area. And that's where line construction's going on right now. We're building. There are a couple structures down in here. There's this little pond right there and some structures around that we're taking action on to prevent the fire from burning it. You can see one of the structures right there. So we're down in there building fire line and coming up with a plan to protect that and to stop the fire on its easternmost progression right there at Spruce Ridge. This is Spruce Ridge right here for all you folks that already know that, right on the county line. Coming back around on the top of this, we expected to do the exact same thing I described. This is over towards Dock, I think it's Dock Flat, and up on pretty much, you can see what did the same thing. If I'm to zoom in here, it carried through that heavy fuel and it got up on top and it couldn't sustain itself. There's a Jeep trail here that we've used with a dozer just to make sure that, as an insurance policy, that we had a line that might possibly help to contain the fire, but the fire has not progress past the aspen patches once it gets to the top. And finally, as we come back around the fire, we have what we call Division A. That's from Lookout Mountain back down into the bottom. And today I was up there. I flew up there. I didn't walk up there. I talked to the folks on the ground. You know, the majority of that right there is looking real good. If you look up the canyon, I think you have that camera over on the gondola. You can look over there and you'll see that there's still some smoke coming up there, but it's nothing like it was. There's acreage gain. This right here, this pinkish area, and this pinkish area is from the difference between yesterday's map and the infrared last night. So this is not current as I speak. This is current as of maybe 10 o'clock-ish last night. So, like I say, you'll see another one like this tomorrow showing the impact and the intensity of the new heat. As you know, we had a great weather day, very little wind. It gives us a great opportunity to go after these fires when we get that opportunity. When we first got here, we had red flag warnings and wind and everything else and slope and all those things that just align perfectly to create a huge fire fairly fast. And now we don't have that. We have different vegetation types. We have no wind, and it's given us a good opportunity to go back and put these lines in that we want to put in to protect the community. So that's what we're doing over here in Alpha now. All the way down to the bottom, we're just looking at an opportunity. We've looked at all the way out here on the ridge, all the way from Lookout coming down and back into town. There's the mountain itself, but we're looking at coming all the way out here if we had to, and all the way back down just shy of town, just on the eastern edge of town, if we had to. If this thing really got up and got some kind of odd wind, as you know, it's southwest winds typically this time of the year. If it, for some reason we got some rogue wind that came out and really started wanting to push that fire back towards town on the south side of I-70, we have a plan, and we're currently constructing a line all the way back down using road systems for the most part into where I showed where the houses start pretty much right down in here. So that's kind of a contingency line that we're building. It's an insurance policy. Hopefully we can keep this thing in check and not have it move much farther. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff, for that great update and very detailed. Next, we have William Basin, air quality air quality advisor. He's in about smoke and air quality for the fire. William.
Good evening. So there's no doubt that Glenwood Springs has seen the most smoke out of all this fire. It's been impacted the heaviest. We've seen hourly readings up into the unhealthy range. They've just been impacted probably the longest out of this whole thing. As this fire continues to burn, I would expect the impacts to be coming down. A lot of it has to do with the weather, and it has to do with what happens on the fire, obviously. But the smoke just wants to travel down at night, and as it goes up, it comes down. As it sinks down, it sinks into the valleys. We're seeing impacts all the way up in Aspen that are unhealthy to very unhealthy up there at night, coming down through Carbondale, and then definitely down in here in Glenwood Springs. What's happening is this normally smoke wants to travel downhill. It's like water. Just wants to flow like the river and flow out of here. But as it flows downhill, it runs into other smoke from the Pine Gulch fire, which is to the west of us here. And so it kind of bumps up against each other. And as it bumps up, it can't really move. So it kind of just stays where it is, and there's really no movement. That's why it hangs around in the mid-morning. It kind of lifts up, and then it kind of gets really bad. Here in Glenwood Springs, I would expect conditions to stay pretty constant. You know, it might get a little less if there's a little less fire activity, and as the fire picks up, there's going to be more smoke. But I would expect evening times around this time, at 6, 7 in the evening here, to receive better air quality. The reverse is going to happen over on the west side of the fire. If you're over in Gypsum or Eagle, in those communities or in that general area, a lot of times we're seeing really great mornings. And that's probably the good time if you need to get out and do some chores, go for a run, walk your dog. You want to take advantage when it's clear, just look out your window. But over there on the west side, we're seeing the reverse. We're seeing evening smoke coming in and impacting that area. And as we speak, we're already in the moderate range over there. It's probably going to get a little worse tonight. We've set up air monitors that monitor the smoke. We have them set up from Aspen all the way down to Glenwood Springs to Eagle, all the way to Vail. One monitor can cover an expansive area. So that's what we're doing our daily forecast on. And each day, like I said, it's going to change. The fire's going to change a little bit. The weather's going to change a little bit, and that's going to affect the smoke. So we highly recommend that you look at our outlooks and guide your day around that. We try our best to inform you when the best time is. And last thing I'll say is probably the best time on the west side is about right now. So as soon as we're done, maybe go for a short walk. If you're on the east side of the fire, though, you might want to wait until morning times. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me better with that? All right, perfect. All right, thank you for that update. Next, we have Marty Adele, Incident Commander for Great Basin Team 1 and Grizzly Creek. He's going to give you a general overview of the fire.
Good evening. So what we've got for the next, we'll give you a prolonged look at what we can foreseeably kind of predict for the next week or so on the fire. One thing we've got going, as I discussed in previous communique, is the dry fuels that we have. That is not getting any better. It's prolonged, it's very dry outside, it's very hot outside. That will continue on. Our temperatures, as like everywhere else in the West, are very high, abnormally high, and the relative humidities are very, very low, the amount of moisture in the air. I've been seeing single-digit readings, which are extremely low throughout the Glenwood Springs area and throughout Colorado. With that, I know this is a little bit counterintuitive, but we are looking at possible thunderstorms that will be developing to the north of the Grizzly Creek Fire. Speaking with our meteorologist, this is very normal for this time of year in this particular area. We have large convective activity and the plateau just north of the current fire, but generally on a normal year, we have winds that are pushing out the southwest. This year, or at this current time, for the next several days, we have a northerly wind pushing. So if those do build, they will build over the plateau and potentially come and drift south over the fires at this time. The potential for those thunder cells are very little precip and high winds at erratic directions, which could play a great effect on the operations that Jeff was talking about. But we also could get a little precip with that. There is a chance, not much of one, but there is a chance of getting a little precip, hopefully on the outskirts of the fire. If it is a little bit farther developed cell, it may be a little bit more concentrated, which throws in a whole nother issues that we might have to contend with water coming onto the burnt areas and charred areas. So that's what's happening in the next 2 to 7 days. Warm and dry with a possibility of wind shifts. Another thing that's going on right now in the nation, many of you have heard that there's a tremendous amount of fire activity in the California, Oregon, Nevada area. Yesterday, for example, on the National SIT report dealing with wildfires, we have 240 plus new incidences in that area. A lot of them are being caught at a small size. They're being captured and shouldn't be much of an issue, but they are having some large fire growth. Thus, this puts the whole fire system that we have in kind of a bind. More people or more incidents need more resources, more people, more crews, more helicopters. So the resources are getting even more tight. So dealing with that, the operations have their hands full with what, the potential weather I spoke about, the reduction in available resources, whatever they may be. But as Jeff was very eloquently describing, the fire perimeters coming out of that very steep, that very thick forested area onto areas that are flat and are much more susceptible to the actions that we try to enact on it, the tactics we use. So that gives you a little bit of preview of fire and what we're going to be dealing with. One thing I would like to discuss very briefly, though, I've heard a lot of people discuss the canyon, the Glenwood Canyon, and how bad it's burnt. They're afraid that the whole length of that is charred. There's nothing left but black, and there's a lot of damage. And I'm here to tell you that there are fire in there. There is fire in there. Some of the areas have been charred, but there are even more areas that are still green. There are groups, there are large stringers of trees, large areas that the trees, the brush, the rivers are unaffected, and there's still an incredible amount of beautiful canyon that you've always seen, that you've grown up or moved here to see. It's still there. There are those areas, like I said, that have been burned. In this area, this country, this ecosystem, it is fire adaptive. When we have a fire in this particular area, we have found that very shortly after, sometimes a couple weeks, sometimes a couple months, but within a year, you will see regeneration of those grasses, shrubs, and trees. It may be a little time, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows that it's not nearly as bad as one might have a worst-case scenario in their head. So with that, the last thing I'd like to say is thank you. We have been here, the team, Jeff, Jennifer, and the rest of the team, we've been here approximately a week, and we would like to thank you for your patience. We know very well that it is not easy being out of your home. We understand that the interstate is vital to virtually every aspect of the community here, whether it's you trying to get to work, trying to see loved ones, commerce, or you just want to have the freedom to go check out your favorite recreational area. Totally understand that. We are doing our most diligent, progressive work to get that open. We're working with CDOT, Colorado Department of Transportation, as well as the local resources and the sheriff's offices in this area to get that open as quickly when it's safe and it doesn't affect our operations. So once again, thank you for your patience. We appreciate every day we get with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty, for that update, specifically about the canyon and kind of the effects that the fire has and what the future could look like. Next, we have the Eagle County Undersheriff, Mike McWilliam. He's going to talk about pre-evacuation, ready, set, go, and the alerts.
Good evening. If you live in Eagle County and you haven't already signed up for ecalert.org, please do so. That's the way that we get information to you if we have an evacuation. Also, check out ecemergency.org. That's where you'll find the information that I'm talking about in greater detail. Eagle County continues in stage 2 fire restrictions. We still have evacuations for the areas of Culture Creek Estates and Buck Point Drive. Both of those are south of the area where Bear Ranch is at. We have pre-evacuation for most of the Dotsero area, which is Two Rivers Village, Dotsero Mobile Home Park, Sweetwater Road, and Derby Mesa Loop. The Coffee Pot Road is continued to be closed because of heavy firefighting activity in the area. We have let some ranchers in there to move livestock out of the way. Road-wise, we have Cottonwood Pass is closed. If you have an extremely critical need impacting health and safety, you can send an email to esf1.transportation@eaglecounty.us and ask for a form that you can fill out, which we may be able to get you through Cottonwood Pass. Again, if it's extremely critical, impacting health and safety. Crooked Creek Pass is still closed by the Forest Service. That's the road that goes from Eagle to Thomasville. And the Colorado River Road is open, but the river access from Catamount down to Dotsero Landing area is closed, including the campgrounds in the river. This is because of heavy firefighting activity in that area. The BLM and the Forest Service have notices of closure in parts of Eagle County, so look at their website and you'll see their information. And if you need to get around Glenwood Canyon, go to cotrip.org, and that will show all the detour information to get around that closure. And I'd like to remind everybody to look at Ready, Set, Go, which is a wildfire action and planning website that has a lot of great information on you to how to prepare your home and get ready for an evacuation. Thank you.
Thank you, Undersheriff, for that information. Next, we have Garfield County Sheriff Lou Valerio. He's going to talk about evacuations, security of evacuated areas as well.
Good evening. Thanks for taking time to be with us. I want to talk about some of the evacuations that continue, maybe the reasons behind what we do. People are asking, well, there's no fire or smoke around my house, so I can't get in. So let's start off with the Undersheriff mentioned that Sweetwater Road is under pre-evacuation. Of course, the Sweetwater community is also under a pre-evacuation order. Otherwise, everything remains the same. We haven't made any changes that I'm aware of. So that includes the no-name area, Lookout Mountain, Homestead Estates, High Aspen Ranch, Spring Valley Ranch, And of course, Bear Ranch area is evacuated as well. One of the things that concerns folks is they ask what type of security is going on when you're not there at your homes to take care of them and to be around them. So I can assure you the Garfield County Sheriff's Office is doing regular patrols in all of these areas. We're supplemented with some private security, particularly at roadblocks and checking status of people that come up to those roadblocks. So everything's good in terms of security. We haven't seen any issues, anything that brought to our attention regarding any damage, anybody trying to enter in anybody's home. I think you're in good hands with all of that. Folks, I want to talk a little bit about those evacuations, why they're necessary. Okay, obviously the most important thing is life safety for our firefighters as well as all of you. Okay, the good news is, as you can see by the previous briefing information and the maps, that there are no homes that are right now in danger. No homes have been destroyed. Your homes are in good shape right now, and that's a wonderful thing. We're going to do everything we can to keep it that way. But in the meantime, we still have a lot of activity in terms of not just the fire, but also firefighters moving in and out, driving up and down. You've got sheriff's office folks that are going in and out. And we still have a lot of activity, so we really, to minimize that, to prevent anybody from getting hurt, any unnecessary delays if we have to respond to something, we just need those areas evacuated so that we can do our job. This IMT, which is an awesome group of people, can do their job, get this thing done under control, and then we can move on and get back to our lives. So other than that, as soon as we have any information on releasing any type of evacuation orders, we will let you know that. If you have some sort of critical need, again, this is the exception to the rule, not the rule, but if you have some sort of critical need where you can't get a prescription refilled and you have to go back home and get some additional meds, because we realize you've been out of your homes now for about a week or more, contact the Garfield County Sheriff's Office. We can arrange for some individual escorts in there. Now, again, please understand, this is critical and not the norm, because in case you didn't know, at the Garfield County Sheriff's Office, we're actually splitting our time. We have another fire on the west end of Garfield County, the Pine Gulch Fire, which you're all sure of. And our folks, our deputies, literally are having to kind of split our time. It's not uncommon for those guys to come this way when we have a fire event and we have to help and evacuate homes, and then drive back to the other side of the county and do the same thing at that fire. So again, please be patient with us. We understand. I can tell you that I've actually, in my career and since I've lived here, I've been evacuated 3 times from my home. And that was back during the South Canyon Fire, the Coal Seam Fire, and then the Newcastle Fire. So I understand the fear, I understand the anxiety, I understand the frustration. But we're only doing it, again, for life safety measures for both yours and the people that. So I covered what I needed to cover. If you haven't signed up yet and want Garfield County, the website is 911grc.com up to get alerts, whatever method you choose. So just be patient, seeing some positive and whatever we can to come with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Valera. Our final speaker tonight is Lisa Steffler, White River National Forest Advisor. She's going to talk on Bear Team. Lisa.
I guess I'm the shortest speaker tonight too, as well as being the last speaker. Hi, everyone. Good evening. First of all, I want to lead off with just some very sincere gratitude. First and foremost for the incident management team that's here helping all of us, all of you, and the counties. They've been great to work with, and we've developed a very fast and close working relationship. So thank you for that. I also want to make sure to thank all of you for your patience. I know others have already said it, but it is a really difficult time. It's extending on. It'll continue to extend on. And people are being patient. They're observing road closures and so forth, and we couldn't do it without that. And finally, I just want to acknowledge all the kind words that we continue to hear from these communities. We see them on Facebook. We see the signs at fire camp. We get emails. It's in the paper. I tell you, it really lifts you up when you're getting tired every day and you see those. So really appreciate those kind words. Thank you so much. I want to talk first about I-70 closure. We've talked about a lot of the other road closures in the community, but let's talk a little bit about I-70. So those conversations about when and how we can reopen I-70 are happening in earnest. I want to reassure you that they are between the Forest Service and BLM and the incident management team managing the fire and CDOT. We're working very closely every day to come up with the criteria and really work towards meeting those so that we can reopen Interstate 70 in some fashion. So there are criteria to be considered on both the fire side. Obviously, our first and foremost priority is your safety and firefighter safety. There's still a lot of firefighter traffic on there. There's still a lot of rolling rocks. There's active fire in the canyon, and we need to make sure that we have a safe environment for people of all kinds, firefighters and the public. Then there's also some criteria that Colorado Department of Transportation needs to meet. They currently have their folks out of that communication center in Hanging Lake. They need to repopulate that. They need to inspect some of their facilities, and they need to get ready to start traffic on I-70. And then we also need to talk about how that traffic would proceed. So still a couple of steps there, but I want you to know that we are working as one of our top priorities to focus on the things we need to do to get the highway every single day. Just to add a little bit more to that, one of the really critical things about that piece of I-70 is that it's critical to getting XL Energy in there to repair that power line, which is another part of our priority to get everybody back to a little bit normal life. So we need to make sure we're providing access to those folks in a safe manner as well. I want to move on to questions we've heard about watershed impacts with this fire. Obviously, there are places that we have high severity burns very close to really important infrastructure, primarily the water infrastructure for the city of Glenwood Springs and the interstate. Generally, at the end of an incident such as this, we'll bring in a team that will look at those watershed impacts and how to mitigate those. In this case, we've brought in a team immediately, right now, still in the early stages of the fire, to evaluate the impacts to I-70 and Glenwood Springs water system in Grizzly and No Name Creek. So that team is here, they're working on that. They use some aircraft to evaluate the severity of the burn impacts, as well as vegetation and soil types and slope. And hopefully by Friday, we'll have some more intelligence that we can share with CDOT and the city of Glenwood Springs as to what the immediate threats might be due to rolling rocks, perhaps due to some of these thunder showers, some debris flows, and we want to make sure that we're ready for those things. So hopefully, end of the week is our plan to have a little bit more information. We'll follow through later in the fire with more large-scale, across the entire fire impacts, but for now, we're focusing immediately on the interstate and the water system. That's all I have for now. Thank you, everyone. I think we have a few questions that have come through, so Jennifer, take it away.
All right, Lisa. Thank you for that update. Thank everyone, all the speakers, for the information that you shared. Now we've consolidated questions that came from you guys on the Facebook page, and so Tracy Weaver is going to be the moderator for that and facilitate those questions. Go ahead, Tracy.
Lisa, let's bring you back up and ask a couple questions of the forest.
This microphone, got to be in there a little bit more.
So I think you touched on this quite a bit, but is there a specific process? This comes from our Spanish audience. Is there a specific process to evaluate the roads, and how long basically might that process take?
Do you know if we're talking about I-70? If
Yes.
We're talking about, okay, for I-70. So the evaluation of the road, I wouldn't be the expert on that. I would defer to CDOT for that. I know that they're doing that right now, and they have been doing it throughout the entire fire incident. If fire gets close to the fire, they're immediately in there looking at their signing and the highway decks and bridges to make sure that they haven't been impacted. So they're following along with the fire, looking at that immediately. I also know that they are evaluating rockfall, and the incident has arranged for a helicopter for them to spend the next 2 days looking at that area directly adjacent to the interstate. So much of that evaluation, I know they hope to get done in the next week or so. And then again, we need to put both the highway information together with the fire information to make a plan to get that road reopened.
Great, and I have one more for the forest. When it comes to reseeding or whatever you're going to do and with the bear efforts and the recovery efforts, where can people go to help? How can they donate to that effort?
First step in that would be for us to do that evaluation and see what we've got there, which I said generally comes near the end of the incident. That's where we'll evaluate what's the best way to approach watershed health, landscape health, weeds, revegetation, all of those kinds of things. So that's a little bit out there in the future still. I expect in the next handful of days, maybe by this weekend, we're working with the National Forest Foundation and some other partners to help us think about how people can come to the table, whether that's in form of supporting rehabilitation or volunteers and those kinds of things. So we're working with them, and we'll have, as soon as we have that information, we'll share that out on how people can help. Don't have that quite yet.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Okay?
Let's move on to operations. Jeff? Many of the questions for you deal with containment and why the fire is still showing 0% containment when you've got so much good work done. What would it take to bump up the containment?
Well, that will happen starting tomorrow. What we've done is, you know, the 4 or 5 days, 6 days we've been here, we have digital methods of collecting information. So we're getting better at collecting the information on all the work we do that is outside the edge of the fire than we used to. We used to do it all manually. It took a lot more work, but you can see, let's say, I'll walk over here for a minute. That blue line on the bottom of the map, that's a Dozer line. And we have iPads and different pieces of equipment that record those areas. We don't have the actual equipment a lot of the time on the tractor itself. Somebody that's walking along next to it or in a UTV might collect that information. It ends up on our maps, and you can see how much effort was put into just that line right there that's several miles long. And up above, those bluish looking lines are also more Dozer lines. That's just one example of what's been done that doesn't contribute directly to turning the edge of the fire black. We call it black lining. So when we feel confident that there's a very small chance that the fire will escape on one portion of the perimeter, we start to turn that red edge to a black line. That will occur tomorrow. If you look at tomorrow's map, there will be some black on it in several places. And the percentage we calculate, as you can see, there's a lot of perimeter ins and outs on that map. So even though the fire may be 20, 30 miles long, however long that fire is, you can imagine how far around that fire is as far as the edge goes. So when you see a containment of 2% or 5%, it may be a mile of contained line, which, you know, is a pretty substantial amount of line. A mile or two of line is a lot for a hand crew that's digging next to the fire to build and control, but it may only be 1% or 2% of the fire edge. So I hope I'm answering the question properly, but I think it had to do with kind of telling the story about how much effort's gone in as compared with what you're seeing on the map. And I hope I explained that adequately for the person that asked the question. That will improve as time, I should say it will increase as time goes by. Whether the fire burns itself out in some places, like I was describing, once the fuel's gone and it can't go any farther, we will turn those edges black once we're sure that that fire has very little chance of escape.
Great, and one more question. Where is the next most likely movement of the fire?
I would say that the north end will continue, as I described earlier, to move to the north in the pockets of fuel that are available. I would say the one of our concerns, I'll point out the concerns, is right here where I'm gonna point. That area hasn't had any line put in, it's oak brush. There have been, as most people know, fatalities on fires in this area in the oak brush, and building fire line downhill is one of the, cautions we're given as far as firefighters not to do. When you don't know what's below you, how much heat's below you, you don't want to commit yourself to something that you have to run uphill away from. So that has been contained mostly with retardant. We are trying to assess, and I described the line where I'm going to point now. That black line that you can kind of see down in that corner is a contingency line that we feel is a lot safer way to deal with that fire if it was to come out of there than going and chasing it right along the edge. I'm not going to say that we won't eventually be able to do that. That fire is a dirty edge. There's hard black, what we call hard black, which is where everything's gone, just cooked. And you can walk through that all day and you're not going to get burned. But the edge doesn't always consume everything. So as the fire cools off, it partially consumes the vegetation, and you still have oak brush, fairly tall oak brush that can reburn. So we don't want to walk into that stuff that's still got potential to burn and start putting in a line when we can't see what we're doing. So that's why that edge has not been worked as hard. The other reason is because of our prevailing winds. We were working real hard diligently here 5 days ago on this end, and then, it took out, the fire grew by twice just based on a windy southwest wind day. So, and then we had problems in Dotsero. So we've been shifting our resources where they need to go, and we have not tied that corner up yet. So I'm not going to say I expect that to grow substantially, but it is not secure. And if we don't secure the area in Spruce Creek over there on the southeast side, I'm concerned that will be able to sneak out where I described that line that was being built by Feller Bunchers, and get over Spruce Ridge and then carry out to the east. That would be more of a likely scenario, is that it would go east or north based on the prevailing winds. The only way it will come back the other way is with thunderstorms and erratic winds that want to push it back to the south or the west.
Thank you, Jeff. William, we got one question for you on smoke monitors based on what are you reading in your air monitors in Gypsum?
In Gypsum, that whole area over there near Eagle, Gypsum, all those communities, all those homes, basically what we're reading is usually good in the morning, and then we get up to moderate, which most of the time doesn't really affect most people. We start getting into unhealthy for sensitive groups. Those are groups with COPD, with asthma, young children, elderly. Those people kind of fall into that group. And we're seeing those usually in the evening time, later, 7, 8, and then early into the nighttime there. So that's kind of what we're expecting the next few days in that area.
Thank you. We've got a couple for the Incident Commander, Marty. Are we expecting any beneficial weather for this next week?
Beneficial weather for next week. The thunder cells that we are possibly getting could benefit us, could not. It's all very, very up in the air. They're very unpredictable. If they are light winds and have a slow soaking rain, yes, they would be beneficial. If they are a dry thunderstorm that gives us a fair amount of wind, erratic winds in direction, or we get a lot of rain over the fire, that may be just the opposite of what we need in those burnt out gullies and drainages. So for as far as the thunderstorms, it's if they do develop, it's a 50-50 chance, beneficial or not. Further out than that, speaking with the meteorologist, we are looking at either seasonally or above seasonal temperatures for the next several days, out to a week, plus low humidity. So it's going to be tough for a little while yet.
And are you concerned about lightning strikes as well in and around immediate fire area, and is there a way we monitor for those?
Yes, we're always concerned about lightning strikes anytime the thunder cell is built or has built up anywhere in the vicinity. Just mere being out on the landscape, having metal tools with us and other implements, there's always a threat there. So we once again are working very closely with our meteorologist and other folks from NOAA or the Weather Service to try to see where they're building and take appropriate steps for that. We also, Jeff, in much of the operations section, have had plans since we got here with contingencies for initial attack, or what we call IA. So if we do get a lightning strike and a potential fire start in the area, we can jump on it very quickly. Also working very much with the forest and the BLM and other agencies in the area. If they need help, we could break away some resources, some engines, some crews, helicopter, maybe an air tanker to assist in that IA as well.
Thank you. We did have a comment that we just need a slow drizzle. I agree with that.
Yes, slow, prolonged drizzle would be absolutely wonderful.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you, Marty.
Yep.
And Sheriff Valerio? Couple questions for you. Should there be more evacuations, what should evacuees do with propane tanks?
Good question. Actually, probably the fire guys are the better ones to explain those, but if you've got small tanks, I assume, the small barbecue type, and you can take those with you, that might be a good idea. As far as large propane tanks, obviously, I think turn them off. Don't allow, the flow to the house. But I think that in general, other than maybe extreme heat, what I've seen in my experience is they're fairly secure and not a major concern, but I would defer that to the firefighters. So.
And we talked a little bit about critical employees and how we define that to be able to get them through, and what road do they take if they need to get from one side of the fire to the other for work purposes.
Yeah, and that's a tricky question too, because somebody's idea of critical may not be somebody else's. Obviously, we've had some people that are in law enforcement and medical profession that need to get through for certain medical procedures, to the hospital or whatever. But as a rule, if you just have to go to work, or you just, it's a tough thing to say. But I live in Eagle and I have to take a 4-hour detour to get to Glenwood, but that's still what we're recommending at this point. If somebody is at a critical stage, they can contact us. We have a discussion with the IMT, the CDOT, to see how we can arrange to escort them through. But there is really is a hard definition for who critical is.
Thank you. And one other question is a concern about some homeless camps, and have they been contacted on, I think it's Traver Trail or?
Traver Trail?
Traver Trail?
That's a great question. I think they have, since there's been so much activity up Traver Trail with the fire guys working that and building line up there. I know our deputies have been up there for several reasons. There's, the caverns are up there, the mine is up there. So I'm pretty confident that they have been in contact, that we've contacted all those that we can. They're seeing and being aware of what's going on up there. And I'm certain they're taking, their own precautions.
I don't see any new questions coming in other than what can the community do to help? Does the Sheriff's Department have any ideas on that?
That is such a great question. We get that all the time. I have people calling me on a regular basis. What can we do? Can we donate this? Can we do this? Can we set up a GoFundMe page for something? And honestly, right now, and we talked about this earlier on in a previous briefing, right now the best thing you do is really just kind of cooperate. In a very polite manner, stay out of the way so the firefighters can do what they need to do and we can do what we need to do. Everything's appreciated, but I certainly know that our fire guys are in great shape. They get fed 3 times a day and are well taken care of. We don't have anybody that's really hurting as far as a tragic event where we can raise funds for somebody because their house burned down or they don't have insurance, or just hasn't happened, and hopefully cross our fingers it won't happen. So really right now, the patience, the understanding, the thumbs up, the appreciation, that's always a good thing. And really that probably goes more of a long way right now than anything else.
Great, thank you so much. Jennifer, that concludes our questions.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you to the speakers, the presenters, and also thank you for everyone participating and watching in today. Our next community meeting is set for Thursday, August 20th at 6 p.m. Have a great evening, and we'll talk to you then.